On page 128, we're going to study a lot of Hilchot Shabbat, practical halachot of Shabbat. We're going to study the halachot which we started yesterday, the halachot of a truma, giving a contribution, ma'asrot, tvalim, when it wasn't tight. Then, Mitzvah Shem will go further with many halachot in regard to tircha yetera, making an extra effort on Shabbat, makeba patish, as a part of what we said, they finalizing a work, metaken, fixing, and much more. So it's all boils down to the idea that we're going to study practical Hilchot Shabbat. 128, the top of the page. Aval lo et hatevel. We have a produce that need to have tight. The process is, if someone owns a property on the land, so part of that he needs to bring to the temple as a tithe. Some of that go to the Kohen, to the priest, some to Levi, etc. Untied produce you cannot use on Shabbat. So therefore, the Mishnah tells us that one may not move untied produce on Shabbat. And the GEMARA said, Pshita, it's obvious, because since you tell me that tevel, untied produce, is forbidden to eat, so and it's forbidden to do tight trumot u'maasrot on Shabbat, it's obvious that it's muktzeh, it's set aside, and you cannot carry it. So why the Mishnah tells us that we cannot remove it? Lo tzricha betevel tavul miderabanan, which is only tight that go by the rabbinic decree. And the Rambam tells us in Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 25, that it is prohibited to move untied produce on Shabbat, even the status is only by a rabbinic decree. Shezar'o be'atzitz she'eno nakuv, because that grows on unperforated flower pot, that is not like of produce that grows directly on the ground. So, because the Meiri tells us that the chiyuv, the obligation of the biblical obligation, the Torah, it's only something that is direct connection, they have a direct connection to the ground, but otherwise it's not. So they said, Velo ma'aser rishon, and also nor may one move first tithe from the truma which is being taken. And we explained yesterday that there is a procedure. There is the one part the Kohen gives, and then they have the first tithe, and then the second tithe, and there's a tithe for the poor. And we explained the difference in percentage-wise. So here, if you have the first tithe that you didn't tighten yet, so they said pshita, because this is a muktzeh gamur, it's a definite set aside. So why the Tana needs to tell us? Lo tzricha shehigdimo bekri. If the owner of the field, he went ahead first and he already put aside a tithe, and this happened already after that the fact, which means the Levi precedes the Kohen after the kernel of grain were placed in a pile where first tithe was taken and Truma Gdola was not taken. שנתן ממנו מעשר ולא נתן לו תרומה גדולה, מהו דתמה כדאמר לרב פאפה? כמה שמלן כדשן אלה. You may think like the way Rav Papa said earlier, if you remember when we study 127b, that we learn from that pasuk that the first tithe person is exempt. So he come to tell us, no, that the way that Abaye told us, that it's a osu betiltul, that there is difference between the case in which grain was on the stalks and the case which the grain was in a pile. ולא את המעשר שני והקדש שלא נפדו. The Mishnah said it's also one may not move a second tithe and consecrated items were they not redeemed. So the Gemara asks, Pshita, that's obvious. לא צריכה דנפדו ולא נפדו כהלכתן. It was only necessary for the Mishnah to teach this halacha with regard to a case where they were redeemed but not redeemed properly. So we said, Ma'aser shebda'u al gabe simon. When the Mishnah lists the second tithe, is referring to what was redeemed with animated coin, which means that it's like a silver bullion that was not been engraved. The Rachmana Amar, because the Torah said in regard to second tithe, Vetzarta hakesef beyadecha. They said, the Torah said, and bind up the money in your hand. What does that mean? Vetzarta, davar sheyesh bo tzura. It's a money that has a form engraved upon it. Hekdesh shechilelo al gaber karka. If it's a consecrated property, it's referring that which was redeemed by exchanging it from land instead of money. The Rachmana Amar, because God in the Torah said, Venatan hakesef vekam lo, and it will be assured to him. That's Leviticus 27, which means money, not the land, may be used in redeeming hekdesh, a consecrated property. Then the Mishnah continues, velo et aluf, which is no may one move a room on Shabbat. Why? Because that's again it's considering a muktzeh, and the Mishnah said that he allow this type of a room because the ravens, not the team, the ravens, the real one, eat it. Tanu Rabbanan. So the sages teach us in the Tosefta. מטלטלין את החצב מפני שהוא מאכל הצבעים ואת החרדל מפני שהוא מאכל היונים. One may move squirrel on Shabbat because it is food for deer, and mustard because it's food for doves. Some of the people didn't show up today, it's because they went to the
parade.
The parade, right? Yep, downtown. I heard that it was so packed that they need to open the balcony. Is that true?
Probably.
They said that endless people came from all over.
I'm sure.
Wow.
Big deal for them.
Number one in the, what is it? It's called the NFL. It's the
NFL, yep.
It's a, what is it called? The national...
Yeah, considering it's not played too many other places in the world, they can call themselves the world champions, I guess.
I see. Anyway, so the sages taught in Tosefta, one may move a squirrel on Shabbat because it's food for deer, and mustard because it's food for doves. Which means that that's the way that they eat it. In the simple way that this Tanakama hold the same as the sages that disagree with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who said, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel אומר, אף הם מטלטלים שברי זכורים מפני שמאכל לנעמניות, is like יענים. One may even move glass shards because they are food for ostriches. Right? Is that correct? So they said that in the Jerusalem Talmud, the Amarian statement is accepted and Rav Ashi objection is rejected. So the big question is, what is it all about? So someone told me, when I prepared this shiur, I talked to one of our scientists. We have many scientists in this community. So that fellow said to me that it helps that animal with the digestion when they eat what?
Yes, that's correct. Birds will actually eat gravel in order to help with their digestion. So,
so it's also include the broken glasses. Amazing.
Yep.
To me, it's amazing how Hashem set the world. It's like you think sometimes a broken vessel, who wanted? And it turns for those animals, it helps them to digest
the food they're eating. Yeah. There you go. Beautiful.
So the basic idea is, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said that anything that it's only something that's specifically good for certain animals, that only the princes raised, like ravens. Usually people don't take it, but that princes have ravens. So he said, therefore it's not a muktzeh, because we're considering as a princes, sons of kings. So therefore he says, Amar le Rabbi Natan ela me'ata. So he said, if that is so therefore chavilei zmorot yetaltelu mipnei shumacha lepilin, even bundles of grapevines should be permitted to move because they are food for elephants. So everyone is entitled to have an elephant, and therefore we're considering a prince. So those of you who visited Thailand, they knew that in North Thailand, in Chiang Mai, in Chiang Khai, there are places that people have a private elephants.
That's right.
After the service, we went a group of veterans. We went to Chiang Mai and Chiang Khai, the north part of. Don't mix it with Shanghai; it's two different things.
Yeah, this is Thailand.
And in the north, very north, and there's a very big medical school there. But you see that people over there, they have a private owner of private elephants. So Rabban Shimon Gamliel, Na'amiyot shchichei pilelo shchichei. Rabban Shimon Gamliel responded, ostriches are common, but elephants are not common. Omar Ameimar ve'udeit le'na'amiyot. So Ameimar said that's specifically when a person's own these na'amiyot, ostriches. And Amar Rav Ashi Ameimar ela dekamar leRabbi Natan leRabbi Shimon chavilei zmorot yitaltel mipnei shema'achal pilin. So the same thing, it's a food for elephants, so you can carry it. Ve'it lepilim, if a person have an elephant, amaylo. So why are you not allowing to carry those bundles? Ela, so you have to say ra'ui, because you tell me that we all are princes, so it's proper for a person to have it. So if it's suitable as food for elephants, so you say hachaname here too. In the case of the glass shards, right? The criteria is whether or not they are ra'ui, they are suitable as food for ostriches. And that's make it mukhan, that it's ready for that animal. Since we say that all Israel are princes, son of Melachim, Amar Abaye said, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Ishmael, Rabbi Akiva, Kulu Svir Leshkol Yisrael bnei Melachim. All of them hold that we all princes. So the Maharsha has here a very mind-boggling statement, which I'm not going there. I'm just suggested that you should see. But the whole idea is that is a proper decorum and proper thinking when you are from that royal family. Anyway, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel had the Amaran. Rabban Shimon hold the way that we said. Rabbi Shimon did none. Rabbi Shimon teaches, and that's going back to 111a. בני מלכים סכין על גבי מתקותיהם שמן ורד, שכן של בני דרכם של מלכים אסור בחול. רבי שמעון אומר כל ישראל בני מלכים הם. So again, we should not take this concept of בני מלכים as something that we should feel condescending. It means a responsibility and obligations. So what he said here is to say that the princess may smear rose oil on the wounds on Shabbat, as it's a way the princess to smear it on during the week, even without the purpose of healing wound. But since we said we all considering as a princess, so it's permissible for them to smear themselves with a rose oil on Shabbat. Rabbi Ishmael ורבי עקיבא. So in other words, it's not considering a muktzeh. רבי ישמעאל ורבי עקיבא דתניא, הרי שהיו נושים בו 1,000 מנה והוא לבוש אצטלה. God forbid someone owns money and he cannot pay, so he wearing a garment but 100 מנה, מפשיטים אותו, משבישים אותו, אצלה ראויה לו. אוי. So he said here, imagine a fellow owns $10,000. Now he wearing a suit. What is called that expensive company? Not Nordstrom, I forget that name. So they carry suits that cost at least $600-700 a suit. So that fellow who owns $10,000, he wearing a suit that worth, let's say, $1,000. Not suit for $200. So he hold that what you do with him, you take off his suit or jacket and you sell it. And you give him a suit for $50 or $100. תנא משום רבי ישמעאל ותנא משום רבי עקיבא, כל ישראל רואים לאותה אצטלה. Wait a second, both of them said, since that all of us are worthy of the more expensive clothes, because, why? Because we are considering as a princess, so therefore it cannot be said that one is unworthy of it. So therefore you cannot do that. So you have to go the way that they said that because the one who borrow money get used to something. You remember the story we said about Hillel? That Hillel served someone who was a wealthy man that unfortunately was not in his season and he lost a lot and he get used to certain lifestyle, so he needs to have a horse. So even Hillel himself ride his horse for him. So it means people get used to certain style, to certain thing, and it's a very big, difficult for them. We call it in Hebrew mashber nafshi. It's a very hard in their mental thinking to be in a different state that they get used to. Someone gets used, imagine, to drive Lamborghini and to have a house on the water here in downtown, okay, and to have servants. I'm just exaggerating it for you to understand. And all of a sudden, God forbid, he lost everything. So now, as much as he's poor, we have a different obligation of treating him. In which manner? There are very basic needs that he gets used over the year. And to digest that part is much harder for him than, God forbid, the bankruptcy itself. So you cannot, in short, take the suit or the jacket from that fellow, even the suit is worth $1,000, and said, okay, we'll sell it and we pay part of his debt because we're all considering us a princess. The last part of the Mishnah said, Chavilei kash v'chavilei etzim. They said the bundles of straw and the bundles of wood and the bundles of twig, if one prepare them on Shabbat Eve for animal food, one may move them. If not, one may not move them. So the Tanu Rabbanon, the sages taught in the Tosefta, חבילי קש וחבילי עצים וחבילי זרדים מתקינם למאכל במה מטלטלים אותם ואם לאו מטלטלים אותם. If you have a bundles of straw and a bundles of wood and a bundles of twigs, if one prepare them on Shabbat Eve for animal food, one may move them. If not, one may not move them. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel אומר, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, חבילין הניטלים ביד אחד מותר לטלטלם. בשתי ידיים אסור לטלטלם. Bundles that are taken in one hand, it's permitted to move them. Why? Because there's no exertion is involved. However, if they can only be taken with two hands, it's prohibited to move them. חבילי שאה, אזוב וקורנית, if with regard to bundles of savory, hyssop and thyme, which is a fragrant plant suitable for food or for people, הכניסן להציל ומסתפק בהם בשבת. If one brought them for use of firewood, he may not supply himself from them on Shabbat for food. Lemachal be'ema, if it's a food for animals, so you can do it on Shabbat. And then we said, vekotem bayad ve'ochel. So he can just cut part of that and make it to pieces, and he can eat it. Ubilvad shelo yiktom bakli. The condition is that as long as he's not doing it the way that doing during the week, which is pick them with the vessel. Umolel ve'ochel. And one may crush and remove the seeds with his hand and eat them, as long, ובלבד שלא ימלול בכלי הרבה דברי רבי יהודה, as long as he does not crush a lot with the vessel. That was Rabbi Yehuda said. וחכמים אומרים, and the sages however said, מולל בראשי אצבעותיו ואוכל. The sages said one may crush them only with hands of his fingers, which is a very not typical way of doing it, as long as he does not crush a lot with his hand in a manner that is doing the week. So basically this melacha, it's called dash. If one take the seed from them and pull them out, it's called dash. That's one of the melachot that they forbidden. But the way that they prepare this type, it's called tochen. It's like grinding the egle tal. Explain it in Melechet Tochen 3. Explain that that's, in his view, that's the issue. So he said, "Ubilvad shelo imlol arbe biyado." As long as you don't do too many, the way that you do it during the week. So according to the sages, you should not do it at all. So even even you do it in your hand is still forbidden. But the only way to do it is if you make a shinui, if you make it in a different manners, which means if you do it with your hand, so it's only rabbinic prohibition, because that's not the way that they're doing dash. And that's also the Rambam's opinion. So they said, "V'chen be'amita, v'chen be'figam, v'chen bish'ar minei tavlin." So soon the Gemara said, what is amita? My amita, what is the meaning of the amita? Nin yah, it's min.
Mint. Right?
Mint, yes, mint. Si'a, Amar Rav Yehuda, si'a, meaning tzartei. It's the savory. Eizov, abarta. Eizov, it's a hyssop. Koranit, koranita shma. Koranit is called koranita, which is not known to us by other more than that. Something that we don't know clearly what is it. So Rashi here brought all kind of old French word or Latin, but this one it's like still question mark. והאחד ההוד אמר לו, מאי באי קורניתא ואשתקא חשי. So he said that it was someone that he said to them, who wants koranita, and they found selling thyme. So therefore we see the plan is known to us. So again, אלא סיעה ציטרא זוב אברטה קורניתא חשי. So you have to say that the bottom line is that Sia is savory, Azov is hyssop, and Koranita is thyme. Itmar. Now we go to two different type of meat in regards to law of muktzet, of setting aside. Basar maliach, salted meat, mutar letaltalo b'Shabbat. You can carry it Shabbat because you can eat it as is, the way it is. Basar tafel, if the meat that it's called tafel, unsalted meat. Ravuna amar mutar telo, Rav Chisda amar asur telo. Ravuna permitted to move it, Rav Chisda not. So they said Ravuna mutar telo, ve'aravuna talmid deravava, ve'arav gules ve'alo kidid lemuktzeh. So this is go the opposite way. Did Ravuna say that he's permitted to move it Wasn't Rav Huna a student of Rav, and Rav holding according to his opinion of Rav Yehuda, who is the opinion of the prohibition of muktzeh for salted meat? So how come Rav Huna, in this sense, disagree with the opinion of his teacher? So the more answer, they said, "B'muktzeh la'achila savar la k'Rabbi Yehuda, b'muktzeh l'taltel savar la k'Rabbi Shimon," which means he divided the idea of muktzeh. And Rashi explained here in the word klomar, what does that mean? And I elaborate in my book, Bira Klomar Berashi, on that. But, and I urge you to read because it's a long reading and we do not have the time. But in short, in regard to muktzeh, Rabbi Yehuda hold that it's a muktzeh, and even specific items, and Rabbi Shimon's hold it's only in regard to moving, like tiltul, but only specific items. So that's what in general means. Rav Chizda Amar, Asur letaltelo. Rav Chizda said that it's prohibited to move unsalted meat on Shabbat. והרב יצחק ברמי יקרא לבי רב חיסדא וחזה הוא ברב עזה, הקרב הוא מטלטל משום של אתולה. So Rav Yitzchak Barami happened to come to Rav Chizda's house, and he saw the meat of the duck, and he saw that they were moving it from the sun to the shade, so it will not spoil. So he said, Amar Rav Chizda, Chisaron kis kachazina hacha. Rav Chizda said that that's different. When you have the issue of Chisaron kis, case of monetary loss here, that if it stay in a sign and spoil, so you're losing a lot of money because it's no longer the same level. So therefore, when it's come to that, he may return it. So they said, "Shine baravaza, the chazi leumtza." So GEMARA said the meat of the duck is different because it's be eaten as raw meat. Tanu Rabbanan. So the sages taught in a Braita. Dag maliach mutar letaltelo. A salted fish, it's permitted to move it on Shabbat. Dag tafel, but unsalted fish, asur letaltelo. You cannot move it on Shabbat. Basar, if it's meat, ben tafel, uven maliach, mutar letaltelo. Regardless if it's a salted or unsalted meat, it's permitted to carry it. Tanu Rabbanan. So now we talk about meat that is not ready for human consumption. Tanu Rabbanan, metaltelin et ha'atzamot. One may move bones on Shabbat, mipnei shu ma'achal laklavim, because dogs needed is a food for the dogs. 128b, basar tafuach. If you have a swollen meat, so it's smell bad,
spoiled. Yeah.
Spoiled. That's what Rashi Tosfot have a little different view. Mipnei shu ma'achal lachaya, because it's a food for the certain animal. But the truth is that even animals, there is a certain thing that they're not going to eat. My megulin, you leave the exposed water. So by the way, animals, it means non-domesticated animals, that wild may be eaten. But exposed water, so it may be, especially in those days, it was a lot of fear that a scorpion or a snake put a venom inside, and then the water it's filled of poison. Mm-hmm. That was the concern. Remember the historical background, when people leave and there's no floor, and it's the way that they leave. So you leave open water, it may be something there. So they said mipnei she'en ro'im lechatul, because a cat can eat it, because they check it and they found out that the venom that comes from a snake will not dangerous, because cat eats snakes. That's what Rashi said. רבן שמעון בן גמליאל אומר, רבן שמעון בן גמליאל said, כל עצמן אסור להשותן מפני הסכנה. רבי שמעון בן גמליאל said that exposed water itself may not be kept due to the danger that one may inadvertently drink it. So, because it's muktzeh, you cannot carry it on Shabbat. So now we go to the next Mishnah. Mishnah said as follows: כופין את הסל לפני האפרוחים כדי שיעלו וירדו. Now we talk about the need for animals. So what you allowed to do for animals? One may overturn a basket in the front of the chicks so that they can climb on the climb of it. Even the chick themselves are set aside, are considering a muktzeh, but you can carry some vessels. The Mishnah wants to tell us that even that vessel itself is not considering a muktzeh, like a basket, or Tosfot, if you remember, in 45b, he said that all the animals by themselves are considering a muktzeh. So the whole question is, how you do it? Are you make it mevatel kli me'ichano, which means that you make it a base for something that it's muktzeh or not? So they said, Tarnegolet shebarcha, if you have a chick, that hen that fled, that one seeks to retrieve, dochin ota al chikanes, one may push it even with his hands until he re-enters the house. So even with his hand, that's what Rashi said and the Ran said. Now he said, Bedadin agalim usyachim, one may help cows and the foal to walk. And the same way he said, Ha'isha medada et bena, and a woman may help her son to walk. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, imagine that it's a little child, so she's taking him and he helping him, like the little Avi, she helped him walk. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, ematai, when that's possible, bizman shu notel achat umeniach echad, which means that he used just one hand, that is not depend on so the carrying is not full on. Aval im haya gorer. However, if her son was dragging both of his feet, asu, because it will be prohibited, because it will like carrying him in a public domain, because otherwise, so what's the difference? So you carry 4 cubits in the public domain, and it's forbidden even in Carmelite. If you remember, we studied in Mishnah Brura 308. So, but if it's a private domain, it's not a problem, but you can carry that child. So since we learned in the Mishnah that the sages are more lenient when it's come to carry muktzeh, because it's caused the sorrow for those animals, so the Gemara asks, Omar Rav Yehuda, Omar Rav, Beima shenafla le'amat hamayim. He said that if an animal fell into the, what is called amat hamayim by you?
A stream of water.
Stream of water. So one brings mevi karim uksatot umaniach tachtia. One bring koshes and blankets and throw them into the water ditch. V'imalta alta, and he places beneath the animal in that place, and if animal emerges, it emerges. So again, since you tell me that the animals are muktzeh, set aside, you cannot move them. So that's the best you can do. So they said, meitive, is objection. Be'ema shenafla le'amat hamayim. If an animal that fell into that stream of water on Shabbat, עושה לה פרנסה במקומה בשביל שלא תמות, one provides with the sustenance, the place that you will not die. Why? Because it need the basic nourishment. פרנסה אין, קרים קסדות לא. So what we understand, that yes, if it's a sustenance, we understand yes. But is it cushions and blankets? That's not. Why? Because he caused those cushions and blankets to be what? That they forbidden from carrying it. It's called mevatel kli meichano. So they said, lo kashya, ha de efshar beparnasa, ha de I efshar beparnasa. This is not difficult. Why? This, the susefta which we taught that one provides an animal with substance, is referring to where it is possible to provide it with sustenance. But where is the impossible to do it with sustenance? So therefore I have no choice. אפשר בפרנסה אין, והיא לא מביא כלי מוקסתות ובניח תחתיה. So there are those who say that it's not enough to take care of the sustenance of the animals. There are those like Tosfot Piske Reed and Riaz and Reef. They say that you're allowed to do it for the animals in order to avoid the animals' sorrow. The Rambam disagree with that in Hilchot Shabbat 25. But it's important to see the Mishnah Bura in Shin Hey in 305, his explanation. So now they ask, V'haka mevatel kli meichano. We explained many times that there is a concept of by placing a cushions and blankets, you negate a vessel pre-predestinance, which means that by putting those cushions, you carry a situation that they became forbidden to move, and it will not be quote unquote in a state of preparation in advance, and you cannot do that on Shabbat. So they said, in general, when it's come to bitur kli, I just want to make a statement. The sages forbid, make a very clear distinction. If you cause on Shabbat that certain vessels that was allowed, now it become forbidden, which means you change the status. If it was mukhan, if it was prepared in advance, now you make it invalid, not prepared. That's the idea. Some say that the reason it's because it's like the labor of soter. Soter is like the opposite of building, is like destroying. Because it's like someone who broke the vessels. That's the Aruch HaShulchan Reish Samechei. And there are those who say the opposite, that is like the Melechet Boneh, the Melacha of a building. Why? Because it's like you're putting that vessels in that location. So they said, Savar, Rav hold, Mevatel Kli Meichano de Rabanan, Tzar Balei Chaim Deoraita. He said, let's see what's the difference. When it's come to negating a vessel, so it's a rabbinic prohibition. Causing a living creature to suffer is a Torah prohibition. Now listen carefully. Ve'ate deoraita ve'dache rabanan. So the matter that prohibited by Torah law comes and overrides the matter that prohibited by rabbinic law. So the whole idea of Tsar Baalei Chaim, that causing those animals sorrow, it's supersede, is override the rabbinic prohibition of Bitul Kli Meichano, that you change the status of the vessel. תרנגולת שברחה, דוחין אותה אפילו בידיים עד שתיכנס. We said in the Mishna that hand that fled, that one seek to retrieve, he may push it back to its place. So they said, Dochin ein medadin lo. You tell me that it's push the hand, yes, it's permitted. Help it to walk, no, it is prohibited. Tanina lehade tanu rabanan. We already learned this, what the sages told us. Medadin be'ema chayav ha'of bechatzer avalot hatarnegolet. One may help domesticated animals, non-domesticated animals, and for walk in the courtyard on Shabbat, but not hands. Tarnegolet ma'itama lo. What's the reason that one may not help it walk? Amar Abaye mishum demakpaya nafsha. Abaye said it's prohibited because the hand lifts itself off the ground. As a result, one actually carries it. Tanei chada medadin bema v'chayavov b'chatzer v'lo b'rshut harabim. That to learn in one brighter, one may help domesticated animals and non-domestic animals and for walk in the courtyard, but not in a public domain. Va'isha medada et bna b'rshut harabim. But a woman may help her son walk in a public domain. Ve'en tzach lomar b'chatzer. Needless to say, it is permitted in a courtyard. V'tanya idach, and it's taught in another brighter. Ein ukrin be'ema chayavot b'chatzer, aval dochin b'hem shikansu. One may not lift domesticated animals, non-domesticated animals, and fall off the ground in a courtyard, but one may push them so that they will enter. So again, here the whole idea of the prohibition in this braita, the Mogen Avram explained in Shin Chet in the 308 and Biur Halacha explain at length the whole idea of what's involved here. So now we ask a question. Haguf akashya amarta en okrin אבל דדוי מדדינן, הדר אמרת דוחין אין, מדדין לא. So you have to think, this brighter, it looks like it contradicted the previous one. Because in one hand we said that אין okrin בהמה חייב הרוב, which means the whole idea is that okrin, that one may not lift. Lift, we understand that that's forbidden. But one may help it walk, so maybe yes. So beginning you said that no, and then you said yes. At the beginning you said that to push them you allow, and then you said that you cannot medadin la, that you cannot help them walk. So that's much more than pushing medadin. So they said. Amar Abaye, Seifa, Ata, Atan letarnegolet. So Abaye said that the second part, the hand, the leather clothes that one may not help to walk, it's the halacha of a hen, which is mentioned before, that one may not help to walk. So it's like those duck that you shouldn't involve. So in short, woman can help her son, that he can independently walk, even in public domain. But she cannot moving, fully, because it's a 4 cubit. That's rabbinic prohibition. And also, about the hand, we have to avoid any type of sorrow. So the only way it's just to push her. But the whole idea of causing the animal sorrow, it's a big to-do. Amar Abaye said, Hayman de shachit tarnegolet. So since we're bringing all these halachot, we bring something else in regard to a hen, and it's important. He said, one who slaughtered a hen, so he said, Lichbeshu lelechare be'ara, so he should force its leg into the ground. Inamani dal lehu meidal, the dilma manachlu letufre be'ara v'akarlu lesimanim. So he alternatively lifted entirely to the air, because otherwise the hen places its claws on the ground and cover loose during the slaughtering process and dislocate the sign and the tracker and the gullet, which means that's the kanen veshe, that's caused the shchita to be puzzled, to be invalid, because the minutes that those pieces will move away from their original spot, it makes the animal invalid for shchita. So therefore, that's part of carrying, but that's just as a side note in Hilchot Shchita. So this will invalidate the slaughter and render the hen an unslaughtered animal kerker. So that's the reason why we say that that shchita is psula. Next Mishnah dealing with delivering a birth of an animal. En מיילדים את הבהמה ביום טוב, אבל מסעדין, which means why not birth an animal in a festival, and for sure on Shabbat, but you can assist to give birth. So assisting to give birth, you see a lot of involved. What's the difference? The Rashba explained that assist, it's not tircha, it's not considering a tremendous effort. And the reason that they allow it is you want to avoid animal suffering in any form. So they said, מיילדים את האישה בשבת, which means when it's come to human, to a birth of a woman, even on Shabbat. I remember my first child. It was a Shaarei Tzedek hospital in Jerusalem. So it's 3 in the morning. And I was far away, hours from Jerusalem, and it was Friday, Saturday early, like 3 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, וקוראים לה חכמה ממקום למקום, and they call a midwife for her to travel from place to place. ומחללים אליה את השבת, and when the midwife travel involved with the desecration of Shabbat, and one may desecrate the Shabbat for women giving birth, וקושרים את הציבור and מים לטייט, the umbilical cord of a child born on Shabbat. Rabbi Yossi אומר אף חותכים. Rabbi Yossi said one may even cut the umbilical cord. וכל צורכי מילה עושים בשבת, and all the requirement for the brit, for the circumcision, may be performed for a baby whose 8th day of life occurs on Shabbat. So that's a very important halachot. So basic halacha of carrying, moving from one location to another, it's one of those tchum Shabbat. But here we explains that there is a urgent need. Also, the fear is that, for example, when it's come to taboo, it's come to that part that it's called a umbilical cord. So it's like kosher, it's like tightening. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the prohibition on Shabbat. But otherwise, it's attached to the mother, and she can cause. Meiri said it can cause damage to the newly born baby. And the next parak, it's a full parak dealing with the law of milah, of bris, milah, of the circumcision on Shabbat, and we discuss further over there. Keitzad mesadin. So the Gemara asks, how do you help assist the birth of an animal? רב יהודה אמר אוחז את הוולד שלא ייפול לארץ, רב נחמן אמר דוחק בבשר כדי שיצא הוולד. There are two ways. One, Rav Yehuda hold that the newborn, you hold it so not fall in the ground, and Rav Nehemiah said one presses the flesh around the womb so the newborn will emerge. Tanya tekavdei Rav Yehuda kitzad mesa'adin. How do you do with the animal on the festival? ochazin et havalad shelo yipol la'aretz. You hold the baby that not fall to the ground, ונופח לו בחותמו. You puff him in his nostrils, ונותן לו דד לתוך פיו כדי שינח, and he bring the nipple of the mother so he can suckle. אמר רבן שמעון בגמליאל, מרחמים היינו על בהמת תורה ביום טוב. רבן שמעון בגמליאל said that we have compassionate upon the mercy on the kosher animals on a festival to help the offspring. Hey Chavid, which way they do it? So, אמר אביי מביא בול של מלח ומניע לך בתוך הרחם כדי שתזכור צערה ותרחם עליו. So he said that one may bring a lump of salt and place it in the animal's womb so that it will suffer and remember its suffering while giving birth and have mercy of the suffering. You see, that's happened part of the procedure. We have several people in this congregation who are what is called biased. What is called the one who deliver the babies? Oh, like
gynecologist,
Dr. Larry,
obstetrician.
Yes,
yeah.
So that's what they do. But I think Dr. Ratner dealing also with the delivery of animals. I think as a veterinarian. my previous Chavruta, Dr. Weisberg, we studied 7 years in Baltimore. He has his own animal hospital. So I remember he told me the same. They're putting some type of materials there, so the focus of the brain of the animals over that suffering and let the baby come out. Anyway, ומזלפים מי שליה על גבי הוולד כדי שתריח את ריחו ותרחם עליו. So they also one may pour flutes of the afterbirth of the offspring, so the mother will smell it and have mercy on it, and they said on her offspring. ודווקא תורה ועל טמאה לא, and that's specifically on kosher animal, but non-kosher animal is not. מה היא טעמה? What's the reason? So טמאה לא מרח כבלדה, ואם מרח כבלדה לא מקר בה. Says a non-kosher animal does not distance its offspring, and if it does not distance its offspring, it will not draw it near again. So his no purpose is served by taking these steps with non-kosher animal. Me'aldin et ha'isha. So we say that even we call upon delivery people, the help. So mikdei tan la me'aldin et ha'isha v'korim lachama makom lemakom, that you give a birth to a woman, help her with the birth of a woman even on Shabbat, and call a midwife for her to travel from place to place. ומחללים אליה את השבת לעטוי יומי, בסכת שבת, what is involved, לעטוי הדתנו רבנן. We're going to teach us what the rabbis tell us. אם הייתה צריכה לנר, if a woman giving birth would need for a lamb, so he said, her friends, חברתה מדלקת את הנר, her friends light the lamp for her on Shabbat. ואם הייתה צריכה לשמן, אם she need the oil, so again, her friends does it for her. ואם אינו סיפק ביד, but if the oil that she brings in her hair is not enough, מביאה בשערה, it need to be in her hair, if not סיפק בשערה, if it's not even in her hair, it's enough, מביאה לה בכלי, bring her hair in a typical manner in a vessel. אמר מר, אם הייתה צריכה לנר, חברה מדלקת לה את הנר, so if a woman giving birth will need to lamp, their friend will light the lamp for her on Shabbat, so it's a said pshita, that's obvious, that's pashut. לא צריכה בסומה, God forbid, it's a necessary to teach us the case of blind woman giving birth. מהו דתמה כיוון דלא חזיה אסור, you may think that because she cannot see, so even with the light is prohibited to bring lamp for her. Kamash melan, they come to teach us, otiva motiva da'ata, svira hi kamideh chazachavrata v'avdalei. Teach us that lighting the lamp is permitted to settle her mind, because the blind woman think, if there is something that needs to be done in the course of childbirth, the lamp will enable my friend to see, and she will do it for me. And then we conclude today, if she needed oil, so a friend bring her oil in her hair. So so maybe you say that this is a prohibition to the prohibition labor of ringing, which is basically one of the prohibition on Shabbat. So they said it's the oraita. So for example, you take an olive and you squeeze. You take an olive and you squeeze the oil.
Pumping or squeezing out, yeah.
Right. So either it's mefarek or it's dash. It's one of those melacha. So if you have this hair as an issue, how you do that? So Rabbi Rav Yosef Damrit Rabban Tzchita B'Se'ar. Rabbi Rav Yosef hold that in regard to hair there is no prohibition of ringing. Since hair does not absorb liquid like other materials. Rav Ashi said, אפילו תמה ישחיטה בשיער מביאה לה בכלי דרך שערה, גם אפשר לשמר משנינן. Even if you say that there is a prohibition of ringing with regard to hair, here the friend does not actually bring the oil in her hair. Rather, she bring it in a vessel tied to her hair. Why? Because she does that because it's possible to change the manner in which one performs a labor that is being done to save lives. So we do it for the purpose of the saving life, because we try to distance ourselves for anything that it's melacha d'oraita, that is a prohibition from the Torah. So again, as long as we can make any shinui without chash sakana, without fear that we're creating a hazard issue, we try to make it a little different, that it's clear that it's Shabbat. Now, we go deeper to definition of the woman giving birth allowed to desecrate the Shabbat. So they said, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Chaya, a woman that deliver a baby, like in a childbirth, כל זמן שהקבר פתוח, as long as the womb is open, בין אמרה צריכני, בין לא אמרה צריכני, מחללים עליה את השבת. Regardless if she said I need or not, we're allowed to go ahead and desecrate the Shabbat. Because it's a life-threatening circumstances. If it's more than 2 fingers, it's turned to be a serious issue. נסתם הקבר, but if the womb closed after birth, בין אמרה צריכני, בלא אמרה צריכני, אל מחללים את השבת. Regardless if she said I need it, or if she doesn't say I need it, whether she express herself, the Shabbat does not desecrate the Shabbat for her. First halacha is Rambam, Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 25. It is prohibited to move untied product on Shabbat, even its status only by rabbinic prohibition. And it is prohibited to move the first tithe from which truma tithe has not been separated. And it's prohibited to move the second tithe that has not been properly redeemed. Anything, how about the carrying food for animals? Anything fit for consumption by common domesticated animals may be moved on Shabbat even by one who does not own these animals. If one owns rare animals, he is permitted to move food suited for them. However, others are prohibited to do so. So that's the opinion of Chachamim. Now we said also tiltul ma'achale ba'alei chayim. So anything fit for consumption by common domesticated animals may be moved on Shabbat even by one who does not own these animals, and if one owns those rare animals, is permitted to move a suited them food for them. However, others are prohibited to do so. That's the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 308, and that's the opinion of the Chachamim, the sages. Harei she'ayu noshim bo 1,000 maneh. God forbid, from one from whom his creditors were demanding repayment of debt of 1,000 times 100 dinar. The court does not collect one who owe money, doubt or clothes, an essential household item in payment of a debt. It's like here, lehavdil, you put both husband and wife on a property, you cannot collect it as collateral in case of bankruptcy. However, if the debtor dresses in very expensive garments, the court may sell those garments to repay the debt and provide the debtor with other garments. So in our language, just to give an idea, if the fellow owns a lot of money and he has a Lamborghini as well as other 3 cars, so the court can go ahead and sell those fancy cars in exchange for his payment. Chavile kash vechavile etzim. It is permitted to move bundles of straw and wood that were prepared as food for one's animal on Shabbat, even if the bundles were very large. So that's a part of halacha. And then we said dag maliach. It is permitted to move salted fish on Shabbat. However, it's prohibited to move unsalted raw, uncooked fish, as the Braita said. How about moving bones? On Shabbat it is permitted to move bones whose meat were removed on Shabbat Eve. It is all the more so permitted if the meat were removed on Shabbat, because the bones are dog food. This ruling according to Bet Yosef and according to the Braita we just studied. We also study about a woman that may help a son walk. It's permitted to help a child walk on Shabbat, even in the public domain, provided that the child takes each step by himself and doesn't need to drag the child. This ruling is based on the principle when Rabbi Yehuda asks in the Mishna the rhetorical question when he is explaining the opinion of rabbis, and that opinion is the halacha. Now we say that if there is an animal that fell into those water, so he said, Tzar Balechaim Doraita, causing a living creature to suffer is prohibited by Torah law. Indeed, one must take every effort to ease the pain of living creatures. That's the Rambam, Hilchot Ushmirat HaNefesh, chapter 13, and Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat, Nerema 272. Also, we learned the halacha in regards to slaughter hen. One who slaughtered a hen must take certain to force their legs into the ground or lift them completely off the ground so as to invalidate the kosher slaughter. That's the Abaye. And we said that one may not birth an animal. It's prohibited to birth an animal on Shabbat or on festival. However, it is permitted to assist in the birth, even on Shabbat. The manner in which it is permitted to assist the birth are the following: holding the newborn so it does not fall, blowing into its nostrils, and placing a teat into his mouth. This ruling is as far as the Mishnah and according to the statement of the Amoraim. However, the Amoraim do not disagree in this manner. They merely cite different examples. The legal status of regular women in a childhood is that of a dangerously sick person, and all her needs may be performed on Shabbat. A lamp may be kindled for her, even if she's blind, as calm her. Any labors that can be performed in an atypical manner should be performed that way. And he said, "Merachamim hayinu al be'ema Torah." When a kosher animal pushes away its newborn, it is permitted to splash fluid from the place of the newborn. It's also permitted to place a lamp or salt into the mother womb to cause it pain. So it will have pity on the child and draw it near. The procedure may be performed on non-kosher animal because it is ineffective. That's the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 5:23.